I'm ready, champ.
All right. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Our Cup featuring...
Hi, I'm Emma, Jane Geisler. I live in Bushwick, Brooklyn. I've lived in New York for about 5 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And I'm Jared Lau, live in Manhattan, coffee enthusiast, also new to New York. And so today we will be featuring a roast from Parlour Coffee. And actually, fun fact about the box on the back is that it's all compostable. So we're all about being conscious of our waste products. Yes, so we're super excited to get this going. And then, yep, we got a little medium coarse ground here with pre-washed filters. So while this is getting set, Emma, what do you do?
What do I do? I am currently an environmental studies major at the new school. So that's cool. Mostly why I wanted Jared to mention the fact that this is a very nice packaging. I have been attending there like a month and it's awesome. I really like it. Yeah, I'm also a photographer. I'm trying to get into modeling a little bit. I really want to start using my social media platforms to kind of create a community around, like Jared's creating a community around coffee. I really want to talk about living sustainably and like making really good decisions in like little ways to just like have less of a harsh impact on the earth. So yeah, that's kind of like what I'm passionate about.
Nice. And it's been, I know you, and I know that you've had quite a journey getting, to this
Yeah.
point. So it'd be great to hear, where, you started and how you got to this point because you're new to New York. Because you weren't always doing this. So tell us about your path.
I'll go from present backwards. So before moving to New York, I was living in Rochester, which is where I know Jared from. And I was actually working at a restaurant called Restaurant Good Luck. Check it out, it's pretty great. That was awesome, and I was doing that because I was on a gap semester from school, which was the Eastman School of Music. So a year ago, I was enrolled as a percussion major at the Eastman School of Music, and I was doing that, and I was a sophomore, so I had been there a year and a half. And I thought I was going to be like a classical timpanist for like most of my life. I really wanted to do that. I was super passionate about classical music and percussion, and I loved it. Music is so much fun, as I'm sure Jay knows. And so, I even went to a boarding school for my senior year of high school, which is funny. And then last year, I just realized that I wasn't completely passionate about it. I was practicing, but I was never really happy. I wasn't excited to. I wasn't enjoying my time that I was spending. Spending 4 or 5 hours a day doing something that like your heart isn't in is like super, super exhausting. So, and then after like a hard discussion with my professor, it was like, maybe this just isn't for me. So gap semester, worked at a super dope restaurant that's farm to table, sustainable, and I realized that I hadn't been passionate about sustainability for like quite some time. So it just kind of made sense for me to go into school doing that, and I have been loving it so far, and I am super excited because I have all these opportunities kind of opening up around that. So it feels like I made the right decision.
So for people who also may be on the fence about what they're currently doing, because essentially when you start out committed to something as intense as music school, and it's something, or even like regardless of discipline, because you were so invested, like do you have any pieces of advice for people who might be going through similar thought processes, and if there's any kind of advice that you wish you could have given yourself when going through that process?
Yeah.
If you want to talk about that, that'd be, I think, really helpful.
Yeah, no, I actually kind of love talking about this because after I made that decision and like people found out that I was going to be leaving the music world, a lot of people came to me and asked me about their own lives, and that was kind of cool and kind of weird that people trusted me with that. But I guess advice to myself would be to so many pieces of advice. I guess in and to just keep trusting your gut and to just like keep really don't brush things aside. I think I was someone who, would acknowledge that I was struggling or not happy, and I would kind of just not want to acknowledge that because it's a super hard thing to acknowledge. It's like, oh my gosh, this thing that I thought was going to be the rest of my life brings me very little joy for what it is that I'm doing, and so it's super hard to like get that through your head. But once you do, it's super liberating. Once you do that and you realize, oh my gosh, like I don't have to do this the rest of my life. That's such a great feeling. And being like, there's so many other things that I can do that I'm passionate about that make me happy, and I don't have to continue to feel so much like dread.
Right.
So I definitely suggest just trusting your gut is super hard, but once you do it, it's super awesome. It's like a great feeling. And to talk about it. Oh yeah, 100% talk about it. Even if you're like not sure, talking about it with like my friends, my two friends, and like my therapist and my dad just so helped me kind of like work through it. And a lot of people were like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I don't see you doing this. I see you doing X, Y, and Z instead. Like you're just that kind of person. And sometimes you're like, not sure how I feel about that. And you're like, no, that makes sense. Like I get it. So yeah, I think that's probably what I would say to people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really great. Because it's like we always have a lot more time than I think we realize.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times it's like gap semesters, gap years, like that's okay. It tends to be a weird stigma, especially in music school, music land. Taking time off, gets people scratching their heads in the wrong way. But at the same time, it can be super beneficial.
Right.
To just take the time that you need because you're on your path, you're living your timeline, and life isn't a race. As much as of a cliche as that may sound, it's not about getting there first. It's not even about getting there. It's about just figuring out what you want to do and
how you get there.
Yeah, how you get there. It's like having a goal, and figuring out what that goal is, because sometimes we don't have those crystal clear images of what we want to do. Because it's like, for same boat as you, I started out in music school, graduated, and I was like, heck, what do I really want to do?
Yeah.
And so now it's about figuring all that out and going down that path and trying, like, don't be afraid to try different things.
Right. And one of the conversations I had with my professor about taking a gap semester, because like that can be just scary in and of itself. You feel like you're gonna get behind. You feel like, and I took a gap semester 95% sure that I wasn't gonna go back to school because I just, like it had already solidified in my head, but I still wanted to just take that time. But one of the things that I've talked about with my professor at Eastman was that taking a gap semester is important because it's like you're going from, it's like you're engaged. Like let's pretend you're engaged with like music, and then you break up and you have like a divorce, and then you immediately go to a new school, a new relationship, a new engagement with whatever it is. Like that's kind of scary, and I feel like you don't have a lot of time to process it and like, wrap your head around it. So like while I may have felt that I could have just jumped into school in the spring or in the winter doing, environmental studies or sustainability, whatever, having that time to really, really, really think about and like it's almost like a recovery period, because like when you think about the fact that you just made an incredibly huge decision, like it's a big decision, you kind of need to just step back and like relax a little bit. So getting that time to kind of just work and do my own thing and kind of just fall into that schedule of that was really nice because it gave me a lot of reflection time. And I know that kind of sounds cheesy, but it honestly, it was so worth it. Like it felt so good. So yeah, definitely don't be afraid to take gap semesters or gap years or gap.
No, absolutely. And I can test
Yeah.
to the opposite end of the spectrum, because I graduated and started my new job. Graduated May 19th, started June 3rd, so like no gap time at all. And I was really scared and nervous at first because it was something very different. Like I'm doing marketing and sales, so it's very different than music. But fortunately, I've been blessed with a really good company that really kind of helped that transition period, and I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, sometimes, especially at that beginning, I was like wishing, like, man, maybe what if I did take, a couple months just to figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's not a race.
Yeah.
And it's like hindsight's 2020, and then at the same time we have this freshly brewed coffee. So I feel like let's give this a taste.
I know, I'm so excited.
Let's give this a taste.
I feel like we should preface this with the fact that I'm not a coffee drinker, and I actually very commonly don't like coffee. But the last time Jared served me coffee, which is actually a video, I loved it. It was
Right.
so good.
It was, yeah.
And I've never had that happen before. Anyone who knows me knows that I just don't drink coffee. Like I just don't like it. So this is gonna be interesting.
So this is a new adventure. This is just is this your second cup or?
Second cup of coffee. I finished the first cup.
Yeah,
I
she
never
finished
finished a cup of coffee.
Yeah, we were talking after the first video, and she drank it. I was surprised. I thought she was just gonna taste it and be like, "Wow, this is nice," and then politely put it down. No, she drank it, and then so a little bit about this Wallabout, named for our roastery's neighborhood, adjacent to Brooklyn's historic Navy Yard. Wallabout is a modern take on coffee's classic elements. Seasonal selections from Colombia and Peru create a comforting weighted cup of caramel, toffee, and bittersweet chocolate. So that's quite an introduction. So yeah, so I guess we'll give it a good old taste.
Yeah, I tasted it also.
That's good. That's so
Such
sweet.
a fast reaction.
This is so good. I slurp my coffee. That's the best way to taste it, is to slurp it. It just gets all
You
over.
know who slurps their coffee?
Who slurps
My
it?
father.
Wow, he knows his stuff.
He really does. But he's still drinking Folgers.
Nice. Hey, I mean, there's nothing on Folgers.
Whatever you got, whatever you got.
No, I love,
Yeah,
Folgers
it's
has a
nice.
very special place in my heart. And then, so a bit on sustainability here. We take pride in the sense that we're always using, glass washable mugs every time we brew. You'll never catch us using paper mugs here at Our Cup or here on the channel, because we're really all about just reusing quality mugs. At the same time, investing in a good mug takes good care of the coffee, because in this case, this is an $8 mug that is double walled. So as far as if you're really into the nitty gritty rabbit hole of preserving the best taste of the coffee, in the sense that this double wall allows it to stay hot at the prime drinking temperature, but at the same time, it's not hot to hold. It feels nice. And then also, the importance of to-go mugs. Honestly, if I were to stress one thing as far as being sustainable within, your coffee process, or even going out, is, get a reusable mug, because so many, Starbucks cups, whatever cups, paper is everywhere. But at the same time, so you can bring around your own trendy little mug here. Mine's from Ugly Duck in Rochester, my hometown. Repping it, and it's it just objectively looks better than paper. Your local coffee shop's probably got some cool logo, so you can sport that and look nice, and at the same time helping the planet, helping the earth. Which is super important because we kind of live here.
Can I say one thing about that?
Yeah, of course.
One thing that I've thought a lot about and realized is that a lot of the time people don't really think about where their waste is going. They don't even think about their waste. And one of the things with this is that it's cool because you are not making any new, you're not using up any energy in the world when you use this. And obviously you buy this one time and it's probably gonna last you a really long time if you get a good one. And I think once you start to keep track of the waste that you're producing and the things that you're using and the effect that they can have on the planet, it becomes so much more attainable to just carry this around with you. And it's so much more worth it because you know that you're leaving practically zero impact after using it. And I think that that's probably one of my favorite things about having a reusable water bottle with me at all times. I have a little metal spork that I carry around with me everywhere, and I just used it at Sweetgreen, and I got a bowl them and they wash it, and so I virtually like created no waste doing that. I had like a napkin, which is a little thin piece of paper, and that's not gonna be the end of the world, but like those plastic forks, and the thing is like oftentimes the systems of like composting and recycling they're not doing too well all the time because so many people will throw dirty cups into the recycling. Those cannot be recycled. So when you have something like this and you're only using your own thing and you just keep reusing it and reusing it, it's so beneficial for the planet.
Right.
That was my little rant.
No, it's good because at the same time, another thing that you told me as far as composting, I remember it's like I had this thing like, oh yeah, it's compostable, and you're like, yeah, but do you compost it? And I was like, oh, I thought that by the definition of compostable is not only by like finding the compostable items, but then at the same time actively making sure that the waste goes in the right place. So that was another important detail that I kind of missed.
Right. If you are using something that's compostable and you're like feeling pretty good about yourself, that's awesome. As long as you compost it, because things that are compostable that go into the trash and will end up in a landfill are just going to be treated like normal trash. They don't really break down in landfills because there's not enough oxygen for them to actually like compost. So putting compostable things in the compost.
And then at the same time, from a coffee perspective, as far as the importance of the travel mug, is that if you're really, trying to get that highest quality cup of coffee, even if you were to like go out to a specialty coffee house and purchase coffee, putting it in a paper cup and then putting the plastic lid over it, plastic lids always have that protruding that hole that's always open unless you get another piece of plastic to then clog the hole.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it's two pieces, unscrews at the top, and there's a little switch system up here that keeps the coffee locked in a little, of course, a nice metal container. So you're preserving the taste, the aromatics, while only using two reusable pieces. So if you're like super avid about making sure that the preservation of your coffee from getting it from point A to point B, especially if you're commuting to work, like from a functionality standpoint, these are objectively better at the same time.
They're just all around,
and it's
good.
Just all around good.
Yeah.
It's like, and at the same time, I don't know if this is weird, but I took a lot of pride in repping Ugly Duck and just going to Ugly Duck and giving them my money because it was such a community there.
Yeah, it's such a small little community that you want to support.
Right, and there's such a family vibe. Like Rory, he really inspired me as far as the personal touch to brewing coffee and to having a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Because like so many places in New York are like you get in, get out super fast. You never get to slow down and just chill.
Right.
And it's like what I love about Ugly Duck and Rory specifically, and even the entire staff there. Like you see when they're pouring your coffee and they're prepping it, they're talking to you, they're seeing how your day is going, and it's like, that's what this represents. Yeah. It's so much more than the coffee branding or whatever. It's like, you're a part of that community, you're supporting that community because they're doing a lot of things for the environment, doing a lot of things for the farmers that grow the coffee and building those fair trade relationships, and it's good. So at the same time, there's like so many different levels to, a travel mug.
Right.
So.
I know. I think another thing, that I'm trying to like do more on with, making smart choices is exactly that, and supporting small businesses and local brands, and I want to give them my money. I don't want to give my money. I go to Starbucks. I went last week and I bought a lemon loaf and I had to put it in like a little cloth bag, and they were really confused, but it worked. And I don't enjoy doing that, but it was a super pitch. But I'm so much more rather give my money to Ugly Duck Coffee and Brett's Bakery right near school, and like little companies that are just like doing their thing, because I think that those are going to be the companies eventually that the world's going to like start to stand on. And I think we get used to so much support and so much reliance on super big corporations such as Starbucks, and I think support the little guy.
No, because like that's where the biggest change happens, because as the local sphere starts to change and evolve, it forces the people up top to change and adapt.
Yeah.
Kind of going back into the realm of in coffee terms, it's like Starbucks got people used to paying for expensive cups of coffee. So when you go to a coffee house, they charge you $3, $4 for a cup. You're like, oh, that's fine. I do that at Starbucks. So it's like, as far as that, they propel the little guy, but at the same time, the little guy propels the big guy, because now Starbucks is like, oh, we can't just serve, whatever. So now they're focusing on specialty drinks, the reserve roasteries. So it's like a lot of change is gravitated and can be really propelled by, the local organizations. At the same time, the biggest change in general starts with, the local, the individual.
It starts with you.
And it starts with you. And in that regard, Emma, as the environmentalist and as far as somebody who's studying how we can start to make a change, what are some pieces of advice that you have for somebody who wants to start making an impact, as far as managing waste, managing whatever, but at the same time, you see that, we're all used to seeing those crazy videos of somebody who could fit all their trash in this mug, but that's not necessarily realistic. So would you have some realistic, piece of advice that, the everyday person can just be conscious and aware of to make small changes that will have big impacts?
So this is something that I want to work on as my career. I want to help people do this because I really think that it's about, I think it's about more people trying instead of very little people doing it all to an extreme. And I love those small amounts of people that can fit their trash into a jar and don't use any trash whatsoever, but I also want more people to just gain momentum on this and know that it's not for the select few. I want it to be such a big movement of people doing this because that's what we need. We need, 50% of the population reducing their waste by 25%. Those are just random numbers, but just having that would make such an impact instead of 1%. And so if I think for someone who may be intimidated by that idea, it really just takes a little bit of thinking. It literally takes a little bit of thinking. We all have forks in our house, right? So literally if you throw a fork into your bag, into your into your backpack or your purse or whatever, and you go and you get dinner and you're like, oh, they're gonna come with plastic, you just refuse. No, I don't need a plastic bag. No, I don't need a plastic fork, and you have that fork with you. I also get that can be hard to remember, but also refusing is a really big part. So I'm getting something that I know I don't need any plastic utensils with, and sometimes I see people they'll just throw them into the bag, the workers or whatever. I'm very much no, please. I'm very aggressive about saying no and making sure that they don't give me anything I don't need because I don't need it. Most of the time people just throw it in the trash, and that wasn't even used. It doesn't even, the little fork doesn't even leave the plastic bag. So saying no is super important. If you're going to your local bodega and you're getting some ice cream or some fruit or something and you're gonna walk home, just don't use a plastic bag. I know they're so quick and they're already putting your stuff in the plastic bag before you even walk up to the counter. And it can be kind of intimidating, but literally before I put my stuff down, I'm I don't need a plastic bag. Thanks, and I smile. Because I really hate it when they just throw this one apple or this one, ice cream or this one juice that I'm getting, whatever, into a plastic bag. I'm literally going right home. My home is literally across the street. So just saying no will make such a huge impact, and you'll realize that you don't need the things that you're being given. We're honestly, most of the time, just given stuff that we don't need at all. It was a little rant. But I think that's a big thing, is just saying no. Mm-hmm. And then doing more things and remembering stuff, like a reusable mug, like a water bottle, like a little fork. Those can honestly make such an impact. It's ridiculous. You don't realize how much trash you use in a day until you start to make these changes, and then you're oh, I haven't literally had to throw anything away today at all. That's so cool. And supporting local businesses also comes with that. Most of the time, I love it when you go to a little coffee shop and you bring your own mug, and then they give you $1 off or 50 cents off. That's the best feeling ever. You're being rewarded for trying to help the planet. That's so cool. And then with that, just supporting small local businesses, often with things like, not even like coffee, but things like fashion, clothes, home products. Those little businesses or like higher quality businesses are gonna be more expensive. Those things are gonna last you so much longer, and honestly, you're gonna treat it better, and it's just gonna last longer. It's more well made. You're paying for what you get, and I think that that's so important. I think this idea of like fast fashion, and I could go into a whole another podcast about this, but like I think that that idea is so going out the drain, and I just want people to like keep up and get with it, you know?
Because it's one of those things where it's like when you think about it, as far as using, you know, bringing your own fork, bringing over your own, you know, materials. At first, I was thinking, oh man, that's not convenient, blah blah blah. But then you think about it, you know, when you're at home, chances are you're using your own forks, using your own things, so you're already in the habit of washing and taking care and doing that at home. So it's just taking those habits and just translating when you go out.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you have this revelation where it's like, wow, I have my fork that I cleaned and I put my mouth on.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time, it's like from like a germ standpoint, it's like I know that this is clean. I know that because I cleaned it. At the same time, like when you receive that little plastic fork in a plastic bag, you know all the hoops that went through to get in that plastic bag.
Yeah.
Like as far as sanitation things goes, it's like it might be clean, but is it? So it's like so it's just like figuring out ways to. It's a lot simpler than I think we think it is.
It really is.
Because we already engage in so many of those habits. We already engage in running a dishwasher, hand washing, however you do it. I know in like Asian culture, the dishwasher is just a drying rack. We just hand wash in the sink. But either way, it's like you're already in the habit of washing things and reusing things, and it's just taking that space and that habit and applying it into everything else that we do. And I think if we're just aware of that, it's already a huge difference.
Yeah. The more self-aware you can be in like such a broad spectrum. And I think it's so funny because I could connect sustainability to like self-love and being a good person and just like having like a sense of peace overall. And that's like something that interests me in general, because I think when you become, the more self-aware you can be, the more positive of an impact you're gonna have on the world as in general. Like I love just walking in someplace and just being so kind with whoever it is that's serving me or taking care of me, and being like, hey, I know this, like I bring metal tins. I love doing this. I bring like big metal tins if I go to a restaurant, or like I've asked people to like put like a pastry in it or something, and I love just being like, hey, I know this is a little weird, but would it be okay like if you put this in here, and you just smile and you're kind to them? They're gonna be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Yeah, totally. Like, and they, you know, they'll give you a discount, or they'll just, it's just such a good interaction, and like that energy that you get from doing that is so rewarding. To me, that's like my favorite thing, because I love talking about it, clearly. But like when I bring it into my little parts of my life and getting to talk about it with different people throughout my day, it's like my favorite thing ever. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Emma, this brings us to the espresso round, where we answer your questions, no matter how random they may be.
All right, I'm ready.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Question number 1.
Okay.
Scooter or Uniwheel?
Scooter.
Scooter. All right. Chair or stool?
Stool.
Stool. All right. Classic Coke or Pepsi?
I don't really like drinking soda.
Ooh.
But Coke.
Coke. What is your go-to beverage then?
Water.
Water.
Or if I'm feeling frisky, like a nice, good lemonade.
Frisky, a good lemonade.
Yeah.
All right. What is your spirit fruit?
Raspberries.
Raspberries.
Yes.
Do you tie your shoe, right shoe first, left shoe first?
Right shoe.
Right shoe.
Yep.
Double knot, single knot?
Single knot.
Single knot.
Yeah.
Do you like push doors or pull doors better?
Definitely pull. Definitely pull.
Have you ever gone up a down escalator, and have you ever gone up on a down escalator or down on an up escalator?
Yes. Yes, I have. Burbank Mall in Los Angeles, California. I'm very sorry for how obnoxious I was when I was 13.
Do you have a skincare routine?
You're worse. Yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Wow. Nice. If you had to choose one, would you rather always shampoo your hair or always condition your hair?
That's a good one. I have really thick, curly hair, obviously. And I would probably say condition it. Yeah, gotta
Wow.
get that volume.
If you could be a bird, where would you fly to first?
Oh my god. Malaysia.
Malaysia?
Yeah.
Wow. And lastly, if you had to, if you were stuck carrying a kayak, or like, no, what was it? It was something so wild. I'm drawing a blank. Yeah. Oh yeah. Would you rather carry a kayak across the country, or would you rather? Oh wow, this one was so wild. I'm drawing a complete blank.
I'm waiting.
We're waiting here until I can remember. Oh, what was it? Oh yes. Would you rather carry a kayak across the country, or would you rather climb up a mountain with a sloth on your back?
Definitely climb a mountain with a sloth on my back because I'd be climbing a mountain with a sloth on my
That
back.
question was so special, and wow. So
I'm glad I could answer.
wow. So thank you so much, Emma, for joining us on this adventure on sustainability, like talking about sustainability, being aware, and at the same time going through these journeys of, going down one path and realizing you want to go down another path, and knowing that that's okay, and we're all on our own timeline.
Yeah.
It's like, that's super dope.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. This coffee is very good.
This is our second cup of
This
coffee.
is my only second cup of coffee I've had in my life, and I freaking love it. Let me
So,
tell you.
so thank you for taking your time out of your day to watch this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, then I guess you can give it a thumbs down, but please give me some feedback. Comments are always welcome. And again, thank you so much for your support, and I would really appreciate it if you were to subscribe to the channel. Episodes every week. It's going to be a fun time, just chilling over coffee. And if you too want to join me here, the door for collaboration is always open. Just feel free to send me a line and we'll make it happen. So, thanks again, and adios.
Bye.